For this episode of Vinland Saga, I genuinely did feel God prompting me and convicting me because of what episode 9 is all about. And before we move on, obviously a spoiler warning for Vinland Saga Season 2, so don't say I didn't warn you. This episode is concerned with sin and its consequences, how one can reconcile with it, and how one can move forward. It starts with Thorfinn having been knocked out, and he wakes up in Dreamland. It's the world he would have liked to live in, one where his dad's still alive. It's not ridiculously cold like in Iceland. He never became a ruthless killing machine, and he never ended up as a slave. He's just chilling when suddenly Thor shows up. Thorfinn's still oblivious that he's in Dreamland and is seriously shocked when his dad confronts him over the hundreds of people he's killed with a knife that was given to him. Thor laments over the fact that he was an absent father and never got the chance to properly teach him stuff, while Thorfinn tries desperately to protest and explain how it was his own fault for killing all those innocent people. However, before he gets the chance to do that, a couple of corpses rise from the ground to grab a hold of him and pull the pair further and further apart until Thorfinn is forced into the depths of the earth, and in quite a painful ordeal, he stops himself from falling any further, and with his fingernails absolutely shattered, he stops just before he reaches the bottom of the cave, which is lucky considering he was about to just fall into what looks like Valhalla, or what we as Christians might actually visually associate with the concept of hell. The reason I say this is because I actually think for a non-Christian depiction of hell, it's really cool because it inverts that pagan Viking belief that to die in battle means to guarantee a spot in the afterlife, and it adopts some of that Christian ethos which says that there is no pride in murder, that it's a terrible thing to have killed fathers, mothers, and children for the sake of plunder or glory in battle. So to depict Valhalla as actually being hell, despite not being biblical, is still a really cool interpretation of these beliefs as hell being a place where there is no everlasting peace, there is no eternal joy, and there is only pain and suffering in a place which is separated from God. While Thorfinn's hanging by the ends of his fingertips, he sees his sworn enemy Askeladd and cries about how many people he's hurt and killed, and then suddenly those same people he's hurt and killed suddenly show up in this massive pile of corpses. Naturally, Thorfinn tries to kick them away, but Askeladd pleads their case and asks Thorfinn to lend an ear to their troubles. He looks and ponders over the many people he's killed, and Thorfinn mourns over the sin he's committed. It is then and only then that Thorfinn realizes that he has to move on. He must leave his past behind and move forward to serve the people he now does life with. I think it's very easy for us in our modern age to distance ourselves from what Thorfinn has done, considering that he has actually killed hundreds of people, and the visual picture of this mountain of living corpses of his victims makes it all the more shocking. However, I ask you to deeply consider your own sins, because we like to think to ourselves that at least I'm not a murderer, but our very desires and our very being is totally misaligned to God's will. There's a quite confronting parable from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 31 to 46, and it's just so incredibly practical for the day-to-day living of the Christian. In it, Jesus describes how on the day of judgment, the sheep and the goats are going to be separated from one another, the sheep being true believers of Jesus and the goats who are not. In the parable, the goats protest, saying that they still deserve to enter heaven, but Jesus responds to them, "Whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. For when I was hungry, you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." I think this is the beautiful thing about media, because the original animators didn't necessarily have to be purposeful in portraying this message, and there's no doubt that's the case. But to me, when I saw that column of zombies all asking Thorfinn to hear of their plight, I truly felt God telling me that such is the same for all those I have sinned against. I feel so convicted that it's that verse that came to my mind as I was writing the script, because I realized that yes, I wasn't like Thorfinn where I've killed a bunch of people people. And even if we look at modern day criminals, of course, I'm not like them. However, God brings to mind sins which are lesser, but are still sins nonetheless. In my past, I think of all the people who I've lusted after, all the women which my gaze was captured simply because I lacked self-control, all the people who I've just walked by on the street and heavily judged in my mind, all the people I didn't talk to because I simply wasn't bothered in my mind to make a new friend that day. It's in that mountain of corpses that Thorfinn saw all the people he's killed, but in my mind, I honestly felt God speak to me and saying that all those people who I've sinned against are in that mountain of corpses. For the Christian, we are called to a higher standard. To ignore the plight of the disadvantaged makes you just as culpable as those who have perpetrated the act of injustice. So even in our modern world, in our Western societies, where the barbarism of war has been left to the past, even then, I'm sure if we are truly honest with ourselves and ask God to convict us of our sin, I'm sure you too can think of a lot of the people who you've sinned against. We are broken people. Yet by the end of the episode, Thorfinn declares that he will be reborn, not unlike what Jesus teaches us in becoming new creations upon realization of the weight of our sin. While Vinland Saga doesn't include the gospel message, I think for us as Christians, as we watch this anime, I hope that you come to the same conclusion as I did, to have received that same message from God as I did, and realize that our sin is incredibly great, but after the lamenting and the mourning, we can stand up in the real world and move forward for Christ, who grants us forgiveness, love, and grace. Simply to confess with one's mouth and believe in one's heart, Christ forgives us for our sins. We are made a new creation, and it is because of those themes surrounding sin that I am still confident to say that Vinland Saga Season 2 is a Christian anime. This is the third video now in my series discussing Vinland Saga, and if you haven't watched the rest of them, it's on the playlist to my right. But if you are interested in other anime, you might like Kaiju number 8, which I reviewed quite recently.